The courtroom fell silent as she stood up. Everyone knew what was coming next. At 34, Maya had built a reputation that made even the toughest lawyers nervous. Today was no different. She adjusted her black suit jacket and walked toward the judge's bench with the confidence of someone who had never lost a case that mattered. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and steady, "the evidence speaks for itself." She didn't need to raise her voice or use fancy words. Maya had learned long ago that real power came from being calm when everyone else was falling apart. The opposing lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had prepared for months, but Maya had spent just 3 weeks on this case. She knew every detail, every weakness in his argument. She had read every document twice, memorized every witness statement, and planned for every possible question. As she presented her case, Maya felt the familiar rush of control. This was her world, and here she was untouchable. Nobody could hurt her because she was always 3 steps ahead. She had built her career on being the person everyone else wished they could be: smart, successful, and completely unshakable. The judge ruled in her favor, just as she knew he would. Her client shook her hand and thanked her, but Maya was already thinking about the next case. She packed her papers quickly and headed back to her office, ignoring the congratulations from other lawyers in the hallway. Back at her law firm, Maya's assistant handed her a stack of messages. "Your mother called 3 times, she said." She sounded worried. Maya glanced at the messages and dropped them in her desk drawer without reading them. "Schedule the Peterson meeting for tomorrow morning," she said instead. "Cancel my lunch appointment. I need to review the Williams contract." Her assistant nodded and left. Maya sat alone in her corner office, looking out at the city below. Her office was perfect. Modern furniture, expensive art on the walls, and a view that cost more than most people made in a year. Everything was exactly where it should be, just like her life. But as the sun set over the buildings, Maya felt something. She tried not to think about too often: the quiet. Her office was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. Outside, people were going home to their families, meeting friends for dinner, or just talking to someone who cared about their day. Maya had files to read and cases to prepare. She thought about her friend Alex, who had called that morning to invite her to dinner. "Come on, Maya," Alex had said. "When's the last time you did something just for fun?" Maya had made an excuse about work, the same excuse she always made. The truth was, she didn't remember the last time she had done something just for fun. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Haven't heard from you in 2 weeks? Are you okay?" She stared at the message for a moment, then put the phone in her purse without responding. Her mother meant well, but Maya had learned years ago that it was easier to keep everyone at a distance. The memory hit her suddenly, like it sometimes did when she was alone. She was 12 years old, sitting on the front steps of their old house, waiting for her father to come home. He had promised to take her to the movies that weekend. She had waited all afternoon, but he never came. Later, her mother had sat beside her on those same steps and explained that Daddy wasn't coming back. Maya shook her head and opened another file. She didn't like to think about that time. It had been a long time ago, and she had learned from it. Person you could really count on was yourself. She had learned that if you didn't let people get too close, they couldn't leave you sitting on front steps, waiting for promises that would never be kept. Her last serious relationship had ended 3 years ago. Robert had been a good man, successful, and kind. They had even talked about getting married. But one day he had looked at her across the dinner table and said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm dating a stranger. You never let me see the real you." Maya had tried to explain that what he saw was the real her. She was her work, her success, her carefully organized life. But Robert had wanted something she couldn't give him, the messy, unpredictable parts of herself that she had locked away years ago. "You're like a beautiful house with all the curtains drawn," he had said when he left. "I can admire it from the outside, but I never get to see what's inside." Maya had convinced herself that Robert just wasn't strong enough for her. She needed someone who could understand that she was complete exactly as she was. She didn't need anyone to fix her or change her.
Oh.
She had built something remarkable with her life, and she wasn't going to let anyone mess that up. By 9 o'clock, Maya was the only person left in the office. She ordered dinner from the same restaurant she always ordered from and ate it while reviewing contracts. This was her routine, and she liked routines. They were predictable, safe, and completely under her control. As she finally packed up to leave, Maya caught her reflection in the dark window. She looked successful, put together, and completely alone. For just a moment, she wondered what it would be like to have someone to call. Someone who would be happy to hear from her just because. They missed her voice, but Maya had learned long ago that wondering about things like that was dangerous. It made you soft, and soft people got hurt. She had built something strong and beautiful with her life, like a castle with walls so high that nothing could touch her. And if that meant she sometimes felt like she was living in that castle all by herself, well, that was a small price to pay for never having to sit on front steps again. Waiting for someone who wasn't coming home. Maya arrived at Hope Haven Women's Shelter exactly at 10 in the morning, just like she did every month. She carried her leather briefcase and wore her professional smile, the one that said she was here to help but wouldn't be staying long. The shelter was a small building downtown, nothing fancy, but it was clean and safe. That's all that mattered. She had been volunteering here for 2 years now, giving free legal advice to women who needed help but couldn't afford lawyers. It was the one place where Maya let herself care a little more than usual, though she was careful not to get too involved. She helped with restraining orders, custody papers, and divorce documents. She answered questions, explained legal terms, and made sure these women knew their rights. "Good morning, Maya," called out Linda, the shelter director. "We have 3 new clients today, and Mrs. Johnson is back with more papers from her lawyer." Maya nodded and set up her usual spot in the small conference room. She liked the routine here too. Same table, same chair, same stack of legal forms. Everything organized and predictable. She was reviewing her notes when she heard someone talking softly in the hallway. "I know it's scary, but you're safe here," a man's voice said. "Take your time, there's no rush." Maya looked up to see a man she didn't recognize walking with one of the clients. He was tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile. Wasn't wearing a suit like the other lawyers who sometimes visited. Instead, he had on simple jeans and a button-down shirt. Him seemed different from the men in her usual world. "Oh, Maya," Linda said, appearing in the doorway. "I'd like you to meet Carlos. He's our new trauma counselor. He's been volunteering here for a couple months now." Carlos walked over and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you. I've heard great things about the work you do here." Maya shook his hand, expecting the usual professional greeting. But Carlos didn't rush through it or immediately talk about himself. He just smiled and said, "Thank you for being here. These women are lucky to have someone who understands the system." There was something genuine in his voice that caught Maya off guard. Most people either tried to impress her or seemed intimidated by her reputation. Carlos did neither. Seemed ... present. "I should get back to work," Maya said, pulling her hand away a little too quickly. She didn't like the way he looked at her, like he was actually seeing her instead of just the professional image she worked. So hard to maintain. The morning went by normally. Maya helped Mrs. Johnson understand her divorce papers, explained visitation rights to a young mother, and reviewed a restraining order for a woman whose husband had been following her. It was important work, and Maya was good at it. She knew exactly what to say and how to say it, but throughout the morning, she found herself noticing Carlos. He moved through the shelter like he belonged there, stopping to chat with clients, helping with small tasks, and always speaking in that same gentle voice she had heard earlier. He seemed to have all the time in the world for whoever needed him around noon. Maya was packing up her things when she heard raised voices from the front office. Mrs. Peterson, one of the clients, was crying and talking fast. "He found me," she kept saying. "He found me. I don't know how, but he found me." Maya hurried to the front office, where Linda was trying to calm Mrs. Peterson down. Carlos was there too, kneeling beside her chair, speaking softly. "What happened?" Maya asked. "Her ex-husband somehow got her new address," Linda explained. "He showed up at her apartment this morning. She barely got away." Maya felt her stomach tighten. She had helped Mrs. Peterson file her restraining order just last month. "Did you call the police?" "They're on their way," Linda said. "But we need to update the restraining order with the new address, and she needs to file a violation report." Maya looked at her watch. She had planned to be back at the office by 1 o'clock for a meeting with important clients. But Mrs. Peterson was shaking, and her teenage daughter was crying in the corner. "I'll handle the paperwork," Maya said, surprising herself, "but it's going to take a while." Hours passed. Maya worked on the legal documents while Carlos stayed, with Mrs. Peterson and her daughter helping them calm down and plan their next steps. The police came and went. Maya called her office and canceled her afternoon meetings, something she never did, by 8 o'clock. Most of the shelter was empty. Mrs. Peterson and her daughter had been moved to a safe house across town. Still at the conference table, making sure all the legal paperwork was perfect, her hands were shaking slightly as she reviewed the restraining order for the third time. "Long day," Carlos said, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of tea. Maya looked up, realizing she hadn't eaten anything since breakfast. "I just want to make sure everything's right. If there's even a small mistake, he could use it against her." Carlos set one of the cups in front of her. "You know your stuff. I watched you today. You didn't just help her with the legal problems. You made her feel like someone was fighting for her." Maya picked up the teacup, surprised by how warm it felt in her hands. "It's just my job." "No," Carlos said, sitting down across from her. "A job is what you do for money. This is something else." He sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Maya wasn't used to sitting quietly with someone without feeling like she needed to fill the space with words. But Carlos seemed perfectly content to just drink his tea and let her think. "Why do you do this?" Maya asked suddenly. "The counseling, I mean. This must be hard listening to all these stories." Carlos was quiet for a moment. "My sister," he said finally. "She went through something similar a few years ago. I watched her try to rebuild her life, and I realized how many people are fighting battles that nobody else can see." Maya nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. "It's good that you're here. These women need someone who gets it." "What? About you?" Carlos asked. "What made you want to help?" Maya felt something shift inside her, like a door she had kept locked for years was starting to open just a crack. She thought about giving him her usual answer. Something about using her legal skills to help people who couldn't help themselves. But something in his eyes made her want to tell the truth. "I know what it's like," she said quietly, "to feel like you're completely on your own." Carlos didn't push for more details, didn't ask questions, didn't try to fix anything. He just nodded and said, "That makes sense." For the first time in years, Maya felt like someone had heard her really. Heard her without wanting to change her, or judge her, or offer solutions. It was a strange feeling, both scary and comforting at the same time. As they finally packed up to leave, Carlos said, "Same time next month." Maya smiled, and for once, it wasn't her professional smile. "Yeah, same time next month." Her car, Maya realized something had changed. For just a few hours, she had let someone see past the careful walls she had built, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, it had felt surprisingly good. 3 weeks had passed since that long evening at the shelter, and Maya found herself thinking about Carlos more than she cared to admit. She had started checking her phone for messages from him, though she told herself it was just about work. He had been sending her articles about new laws that might help their clients. She had started looking forward to reading them. Maya was surprised to find herself volunteering at the shelter. Twice in 1 month, instead of her usual once. She told Linda it was because they had more cases than usual, but the truth was different. She enjoyed talking to Carlos. He had a way of listening that made her feel like her thoughts actually mattered, not just her legal expertise. On a Tuesday morning, Maya's carefully organized world started to fall apart. She was in her office reviewing contracts when her assistant knocked on the door, looking worried. "Maya, Mr. Henderson is here to see you," she said. "He seems upset." Maya's stomach dropped. Henderson Industries was her biggest client, worth millions to the firm. She had been handling their case for 6 months, and everything had been going perfectly, or so she thought. Mr. Henderson walked into her office with a face like thunder. He was a large man who was used to getting his way, and today he looked like someone had just told him he was losing money. "Miss Maya," he said, not bothering to sit down. "I just got off the phone with my board of directors. They're not happy with how you've been handling our situation." Maya felt her chest tighten, but she kept her voice steady. "What seems to be the problem, Mr. Henderson?" "The problem is that Thompson Law Firm called us yesterday. They said you missed a crucial filing deadline. They said our case is now at risk because of your mistake." Maya's mind raced. She had been so careful with every detail of this case. She had checked and double-checked every deadline, every document, every filing. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand. I filed everything on time. I have copies of all the confirmations." "Well, Thompson seems to think otherwise," Henderson said coldly. "They're suggesting we might want to consider switching law firms before this gets any worse." Maya felt the room start to spin. Thompson Law Firm was her biggest competitor, and they had been trying to steal her clients for years. She had always been one step ahead of them, but now they were claiming she had made a mistake that could cost Henderson millions. "Give me 24 hours, Maya said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "Let me review everything and get back to you with a full report." Henderson looked at her for a long moment. 24 hours, Miss Maya. But I'm telling you right now, if Thompson is right about this, we're done. And I'll make sure every business owner in this city knows about it." After he left, Maya sat alone in her office, staring at the stack of Henderson files. She had built her entire career on being perfect, on never making mistakes. If she had really missed a deadline, it would destroy everything she had worked for. Worse, if other clients started to doubt her, she could lose her partnership at the firm. She spent the next 6 hours going through every document, every email, every piece of paper related to the Henderson case. Finally, she found what she was looking for. She had filed everything correctly, but there had been a problem with the court's computer system on the day she submitted the documents. The filing had been delayed by 1 day, which technically made it late. Maya put her head in her hands. It wasn't really her fault, but try explaining that to a client who was already angry. She had always told herself that if she just worked hard enough, if she was smart enough, if she controlled every detail, nothing bad would happen to her. But sometimes bad things happened anyway, no matter how careful you were. For the first time in years, Maya didn't know what to do. She thought about calling her friend Alex, but Alex would probably just give her practical advice about damage control. She thought about calling her mother. But her mother would worry and ask questions Maya didn't want to answer, without really thinking about it. Maya picked up her phone and scrolled to Carlos's number. She stared at it for a moment, wondering why his name was the first one that came to mind. They barely knew each other. He was just someone she worked with at the shelter once a month. But something about the way he had listened to her that evening made her feel like he might understand. She typed a message. "Are you free for coffee? I could use someone to talk to." He responded within minutes. "Of course. There's a quiet place on 5th Street called the Blue Cup. I can be there in 30 minutes. Maya had never been to the Blue Cup, but she found it easily. It was the kind of small, comfortable coffee shop that she usually avoided because it wasn't efficient enough for business meetings. Carlos was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. "You look like you've had a rough day," he said as she sat down. And suddenly Maya found herself telling him everything. About Henderson, about the filing deadline, about Thompson Law Firm, about the possibility of losing everything she had worked for. She talked fast, like she was afraid if she stopped, she might not be able to start again. Carlos listened without interrupting, without offering solutions, without trying to fix anything. When she finally finished, he was quiet for a moment. "That sounds incredibly stressful," he said finally. "Must be feeling overwhelmed." Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes, which shocked her. She never cried, especially not in front of people she barely knew. "I don't know what to do. I've always been able to figure things out, but this time I feel like I'm drowning. Can I ask you something?" Carlos said gently. "When's the last time you let someone help you with something important?" Maya thought about it and realized she couldn't remember. "I don't really do that. I mean, I solve my own problems." "Why?" The question was so simple, but it hit Maya like a punch to the stomach. She thought about her father leaving, about her mother's tears, about Robert telling her she was like a house with all the curtains drawn. Because she said quietly, "Everyone I've ever counted on has either left or let me down. It's easier to just take care of myself." Carlos nodded like he understood. "I get that. After my divorce, I threw myself into work for the same reason. I figured if I was helping other people, I wouldn't have to deal with my own stuff." "You were married?" Maya asked, surprised. "For 3 years. It ended 2 years ago." Carlos stirred his coffee, looking sad. "She said I was so busy taking care of everyone else that I forgot how to let her take care of me. She said living with me was like living with a ghost." Maya felt something she hadn't expected: relief. Not because his marriage had failed, but because she wasn't the only one who had built walls around themselves. "Do you ever regret it? The divorce?" "Every day," Carlos said honestly. "But I've learned something important. Being strong doesn't mean you have to carry everything alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that you need help." They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Then Carlos said, "What if we figured this out together? I don't know much about law, but I'm pretty good at seeing problems from different angles." Maya looked at him, this man who had shown her more kindness in the past hour than she had received in months. She thought about her empty apartment, her perfect office, her carefully controlled life that suddenly felt like it was falling apart. "Okay," she said, and the word felt like jumping off a cliff. "Let's figure it out together." For the next 2 hours, they worked through Maya's problem. Carlos asked questions that hadn't occurred to her, helped her see the situation from Henderson's perspective, and even suggested some legal strategies she hadn't considered. By the time they left the coffee shop, Maya had a plan. More importantly, she had something she hadn't had in years, someone who had seen her scared and uncertain, and who had chosen to stay and help instead of running away. It was a strange feeling, but for the first time in a long time, Maya didn't feel completely alone. 2 months had passed since that day at the Blue Cup, and Maya's world had changed in ways she never expected. The Henderson crisis had been resolved. It turned out the court's computer system had malfunctioned. Maya was able to prove she had filed everything correctly. But more importantly, she had learned something about herself that she couldn't forget. She had learned that asking for help didn't make her weak. It made her human. Maya and Carlos had been meeting regularly, sometimes at the shelter, sometimes at the shelter. Sometimes at coffee shops around the city. They talked about work, about the clients they were helping, about books they were reading. Maya found herself looking forward to these conversations in a way that surprised her. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Maya was in her office on a Thursday morning when Linda from the shelter called, her voice shaking. "Maya, I need to tell you something. The city is cutting our funding. They're saying we have 30 days to find new sponsors or we'll have to close." Maya felt her stomach drop. "What? Why?" "Budget cuts. They're saying social services aren't a priority this year. Maya, we have 45 women and children who depend on us. I don't know what we're going to do." After hanging up, Maya sat in her office staring out the window. Hope Haven wasn't just a place where she volunteered once a month. It had become the place where she had learned to care again, where she had met Carlos, where she had started to remember what it felt like to be part of something bigger than herself. She called Carlos immediately. "Did you hear about the shelter?" "Just got off the phone with Linda," he said, his voice heavy. I can't believe they're doing this." "These women have nowhere else to go. There has to be something we can do," Maya said. "Some legal way to fight this. I've been thinking the same thing. Want to meet tonight? We could go through their budget, see if there are any options." That evening, Maya found herself in Carlos's apartment for the first time. It was nothing like her sleek, modern place. His apartment was warm and lived in, with books everywhere, photos of his family on the walls, and a kitchen that looked like it was actually used for cooking. "Sorry about the mess," Carlos said, clearing papers off his dining table. "I'm not usually this organized." Maya looked around at what he called a mess. A few dishes in the sink, some magazines on the coffee table, a jacket thrown over a chair. "This isn't messy," she said. "This is what a home looks like." They spread out all the shelter's financial documents on his table and got to work. Maya reviewed contracts and funding agreements while Carlos looked at expenses and client needs. They worked late into the night, ordering pizza and drinking coffee, trying to find a solution. Look at this, Maya said around midnight, pointing to a document. The city has to give 90 days notice for funding cuts, not 30. Is dated wrong. Carlos leaned over to look at the paper, and Maya caught a scent of his cologne mixed with coffee. For a moment, she forgot what she was saying. That's great, Carlos said, not noticing her distraction. But even if we get the extra time, we still need to find new funding sources. They worked until 2 in the morning, building a legal strategy. To fight the funding cuts and a plan to find new sponsors, Maya found herself watching Carlos as he worked, noticing how he ran his hands through his hair when he was thinking, how he smiled when he found a solution to a problem. You know, Carlos said as they finally started packing up the papers, I've never seen you like this before. Like what? Passionate about something? I mean, you're always professional and capable, but tonight you seem ... different, like you. Really care about this place. Maya felt something shift inside her chest. I do care about it, more than I realized.
Ah.
Carlos was quiet for a moment, then said, Can I ask you something personal? Maya tensed slightly. Personal questions were dangerous territory, but something about the way he asked made her nod. Your apartment? I noticed when I picked you up that time for the emergency at the shelter. It's beautiful, but it doesn't look like anyone actually lives there. No pictures, no personal stuff. Why is that? Maya felt her walls starting to go up automatically. But then she looked at Carlos's face. He wasn't asking to be nosy or to judge her. He was asking because he cared. I don't keep pictures around, she said carefully. Of things that didn't work out? What kind of things? Maya was quiet for a long moment. She thought about all the walls she had built, all the ways she had protected herself from getting hurt again. Then she looked around Carlos's apartment, at the pictures of his family, at the evidence of a life actually being lived. My dad left when I was 12, she said finally. Just packed up one day and never came back. My mom spent the next few years crying and dating men who treated her badly. I decided I wasn't going to be like that, wasn't going to depend on anyone who could just walk away. Carlos nodded, not saying anything, just listening. And then there was my ex-fiancé. We were together for 2 years and I thought everything was perfect. But one day he told me he felt like he was dating a stranger. He said I never let him see the real me. Maya's voice got quieter, said I was like a beautiful house with all the curtains drawn. What did you do? Let him leave. I told myself he wasn't strong enough for me. But the truth is, I was scared. If I never let anyone really know me, they can't decide that who I really am isn't good enough. Carlos was quiet for a moment, then said, I did the same thing in my marriage. Maya looked at him, surprised. You did? I was so afraid of becoming like my father. He was angry and controlling that I went the opposite direction. I became the guy who never got upset, who always took care of everyone else, who never needed anything. My wife used to say it was like living with a saint, but not a real person. Is that why she left? She said she felt like she was married to the idea of me, not the actual me. She said I was so busy being perfect that I forgot how to be human. Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had just let her in every day? Carlos said softly. But I've learned something important. You can't change the past, but you can decide to be different going forward. Maya looked at him sitting across from her. This man who had spent the entire evening helping her save a place that meant something to her. She thought about how he had listened to her story without trying to fix her. How he had shared his own struggles without making it about him. I'm scared, she whispered, and it was the first time she had admitted that to anyone in years. What? Of letting someone matter to me. Of caring about something so much that losing it would break me. Carlos reached across the table and took her hand. Maya, you're already caring about things. You care about the shelter, about the women there, about doing good work, and you know what? It hasn't broken you. It's made you more real. Maya looked down at their hands, at the way his fingers felt warm and steady around hers. For the first time in years, She didn't pull away. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I don't know how to be the kind of person who lets people in." "You're already doing it," Carlos said gently. "You're doing it right now." Maya looked up at him, at his kind eyes and his patient smile, and realized he was right. Somewhere along the way, without even noticing it, she had started to let him in, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, it had started to feel like a place where she actually belonged. "The shelter is going to be okay," she said, squeezing his hand. "We're going to save it?" "Yes," Carlos said. "We are." And for the first time in years, Maya wasn't afraid of the word we. 6 months later, Maya stood in the main room of Hope Haven Women's Shelter, watching as families enjoyed a celebration dinner. The shelter had not only survived the funding crisis, but had found 3 new sponsors and expanded their services. Tonight was their reopening celebration, and Maya could hardly believe how much had changed. "You did it," Linda said, walking up to Maya with a huge smile. "I still can't believe you managed to get the city to reverse their decision and find us new funding." Maya smiled, but she shook her head. "We did it. Carlos and I worked together, and we had help from a lot of people." It was true. After that night in Carlos's apartment, Maya had thrown herself into saving the shelter with the same intensity she brought to her biggest legal cases. But this time, she hadn't worked alone. Carlos had been with her every step of the way, helping her navigate the politics of city council meetings, connecting her with social workers who understood the system, and reminding her to take breaks when she got too focused on the work. Maya looked across the room where Carlos was talking with Mrs. Peterson and her daughter. Mrs. Peterson was doing well now. She had found a job and a safe place to live. Her daughter was back in school. Seeing them happy and safe made all the long nights of legal research worth it. "Maya," Carlos called out, walking over with a man she didn't recognize. "I want you to meet someone. This is my brother Luis. Luis, this is Maya, the lawyer I've been telling you about." Luis shook her hand with a big smile. "Carlos talks about you all the time. Says you're the smartest person he knows." Maya felt herself blushing, something that rarely happened to her. "Your brother is pretty amazing himself. I couldn't have saved this place without him." "That's what I like to hear," Luis said with a laugh. "It's about time Carlos found someone who appreciates how special he is." After Luis walked away, Carlos looked at Maya with a slightly embarrassed expression. "Sorry about that. My family tends to be a little ... direct." "I like them," Maya said, and she meant it. Over the past few months, she had met Carlos's parents, his sister, and now his brother. They were warm and welcoming, and they had accepted her into their family gatherings without question. It was a strange feeling for Maya, who had spent so many years avoiding other people's families. "Speaking of family," Carlos said, looking a little nervous, "there's something I want to talk to you about." Before he could continue, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and saw it was from her mother, saw the news article about the shelter. "So proud of you. Love, Mom." Maya smiled. 3 months ago, she had finally called her mother back. It had been a difficult conversation at first. Her mother had been hurt by years of Maya's distance, and Maya had to explain why she had pulled away. But slowly, they had started to rebuild their relationship. Her mother had even driven down to attend tonight's celebration. "What were you going to say?" Maya asked Carlos. "Well, I've been thinking about going back to school. Law school, actually. I want to learn more about the legal side of helping people like our clients here." Maya felt her heart skip a beat. "That's wonderful. You'd make an excellent lawyer." "Was hoping you might help me study," Carlos said with a shy smile. "I know it's a lot to ask, but I learn better when I have someone to bounce ideas off of." Maya looked at him, this man who had changed her life in ways she was still discovering. 6 months ago, she would have found a polite way to say no. She would have worried about getting too involved, about what would happen if he decided he didn't need her help anymore, about all the ways it could go wrong. But now she thought about all the ways it could go right. "I'd love to help you," she said, "but I have one condition." "What's that?" "I want to do more public interest work." I've been thinking about leaving my current firm and joining a practice that focuses on helping people who can't afford lawyers. Would you be interested in working together after you graduate? Carlos's face lit up. Are you serious? You'd leave your big corporate job to do this kind of work? Maya looked around the room at the families celebrating, at the women who had found safety and hope in this place, at the community that had formed around helping others. I've spent my whole career building walls around myself and climbing ladders that led nowhere I actually wanted to go. I want to do work that matters. What about the money? The prestige? All the things you've worked so hard for, Maya thought. About her empty apartment, her perfect office, her carefully controlled life that had felt like a prison. I've learned something important. Success isn't about having a perfect life that looks good from the outside. It's about building something real with people who matter to you. Carlos took her hand, and Maya didn't pull away. I have another confession, he said. I've been falling in love with you for months now. I know that might complicate things, but I can't pretend anymore that this is just friendship. It felt her heart racing. The old Maya would have panicked, would have found a way to create distance, would have protected herself from the possibility of getting hurt. But the new Maya, the one who had learned that walls could protect you from pain, but also from joy, took a deep breath. I've been falling in love with you too, she said quietly, and it scares me to death. Why? Because I've never loved anyone without trying to control every part of the relationship. I don't know how to love someone and still be myself. Carlos squeezed her hand. You don't have to be anyone other than who you are. You're brilliant and strong and caring, and you're learning to let people see all of that. That's the person I fell in love with. Maya looked at him, at his kind eyes and his patient smile, and realized something important. She had spent so many years thinking that love meant losing yourself, that caring about someone meant giving up your own dreams and goals. But with Carlos, she felt more like herself than she ever had before. I want to try, she said. I want to try being in love, and still being me. We'll figure it out together, Carlos said. Just like we figured out how to save the shelter. Maya smiled, thinking about how that word together used to scare her. Now it felt like a promise, like the beginning of something beautiful. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Maya found herself helping clean up the kitchen alongside Carlos and several volunteers. It was a simple moment, washing dishes and putting away chairs, but it felt important. She was part of something bigger than herself, surrounded by people who cared about each other and about making the world a little bit better. You know, Carlos said as they stacked the last of the plates, I never thanked you properly for saving. This place, you don't need to thank me, Maya said. This place saved me too. But it was true. Hope Haven had been the place where she learned to care again, where she met Carlos, where she discovered that being vulnerable didn't make her weak, it made her human. She had spent so many years building walls to protect herself from pain, that she had forgotten how to let joy in too. As they walked to their cars, Maya looked back at the shelter, at the lights still glowing in the windows, at the sign that read Hope Haven, a safe place for new beginnings. She thought about the scared, lonely woman she had been 6 months ago, sitting in her perfect office, eating takeout alone, convinced that independence meant isolation. She thought about how she had built her life like a fortress, beautiful and strong but empty inside. Now she was walking hand in hand with someone who knew her fears and her dreams, someone who had seen her at her worst and chosen to stay. She was about to embark on a new career doing work that mattered, surrounded by people who had become like family. Maya had learned that real armor wasn't about keeping everyone out. Real armor was about building a life strong enough to handle both heartbreak and happiness, surrounded by people who would help her through whatever came next. She had spent so many years afraid of letting anyone touch what was beneath her protective walls. But Carlos hadn't just touched what was beneath. He had helped her discover parts of herself she never knew existed, that Maya realized was what love was supposed to feel like. Not like losing yourself, but like finally finding yourself in someone else's eyes.